I'm Jeff Jower, this is Rick Levine.
And I'm Rick Levine, and that's Jeff Jower.
And we do this the first Wednesday of every month.
Here at SoulFood Books in Redmond, Washington.
And those of you who are here for the first time, this is what we do. Rick and I are going to spend the first part of the evening talking about the collective astrological cycles for the month of November. This is not about any one of us individually, it's the collective cosmic weather. After we do that, about 45 minutes or so, give or take, we'll take a short break. During the break, if you would like to have your chart looked at, write your first name, your date of birth, your time of birth, and your place of birth. Put it on a piece of paper, drop it on the table over here. We'll do a drawing during the break, and afterward Rick and I will do 3 mini readings, just quick looks at 3 of your unique charts.
So, welcome to the month of November 2013. We have a great turnout here tonight in Redmond, Washington at SoulFood Books. This month got off to an amazing start, and it's late in the month for us to start. Jeff always says that when we start later in the month, like tonight on the 6th, that means that you're not getting your money's worth.
So you will be getting a rebate
on your ticket price.
That's right.
The fact is that on the 1st of November, Uranus and Pluto, Uranus is an 84-year cycle around the Sun. Pluto is a 243, 44-year cycle around the Sun. And the two of them are now locked in a 90-degree pattern with each other that is creating stress on planet Earth. From 2011 through 2016, the exact squares are number 7. And we just experienced on November 1st, the 4th of these 7 squares that sets the tone for this autumn and certainly for the month of November.
Yeah, those of you who are regulars know that this Uranus-Pluto square started back last year in 2012. Rick and I talk about it a lot because it is the most important astrological pattern from
Maybe 2012.
Right, from 2012 through 2015. And while the sort of lower end experience of electrifying, shocking, destabilizing Uranus in a stressful square right angle with provocative Pluto can be craziness, mistrust, and disturbance, there is a high side to this. And what this is about, potentially, is about making breakthroughs. Uranus, the planet of liberations, in independent Aries, it's about freeing ourselves. And potent Pluto is in Capricorn, this socially oriented sign that has to do with a re-examination of our role in the culture. So, you know, there's that old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Well, these certainly are interesting times, and astrologically, particularly this month, I think, in Scorpio time, we get to bite in even more deeply into these deliciously transformative times.
That's funny that you used that phrase because that's how I was going to start. May we live in interesting times, and these are them. But I forgot, so thanks.
All right.
Well, you know, you talk about the upside of the Uranus-Pluto square, and I agree with you, Jeff. This is about not only changes globally, culturally, socially, economically, changes in government, but it's also changes in our own individual lives. And like many things in astrology, we can either sit back and be at effect from what happens in our lives or from up there, or we can take responsibility for who we are and look in our own lives and say, how can we use the changing, sudden power of Uranus, like lightning striking, and how can we use that in relationship to the deeper transformative power of evolutionary Pluto that goes into the darkness, into the shadows, into those places that are not understood? How can we use those energies, combine them in our own lives and make changes, and in effect, although there's no Taurus involved here except for Jeff, take the proverbial bull by the horns?
Well, and this is certainly a month to do it. As Rick pointed out, We began this month with an exact square between these two disruptive planets, Uranus and Pluto. And then 2 days after that, on the 3rd of the month, we have the new moon in Scorpio. And the new moon in Scorpio every year initiates a new cycle that's scorpionic, that comes from our depths, that deals with the urgencies of desire and the need to purge, to clean, to eliminate. And this new moon that we had on the 3rd of the month was also a solar eclipse, joined with Saturn, the planet of hard, cold reality, and Mercury, the messenger, moving backwards, which means it is time to look deeply into our souls, to engage the most powerful feelings, thoughts, and characteristics that we can find in ourselves. In Jungian psychological terms, it's about engaging with the shadow. That part of ourselves where we tend to push away the things we don't want to see. Because not only is it appropriate, as Rick said earlier, to be, you can be the cause or the effect. And if you just want to be the effect of scorpionic manipulation, eclipsing, and Uranus-Pluto turning your life upside down, don't change a thing. But if you want to be an agent of change collectively and in your own life, I think the deal, it's very Scorpio, it raises the stakes in the game. What was tolerable last month might not be tolerable now. That which was just okay and adequate might not be adequate now, and within some realm of reason, I think the Scorpio transits are encouraging us to go deeper and to take the risks for deeper satisfaction, even if we've got to do without love or a meal before we get to the place that we want to be.
Yeah, and I think what you said about looking back with this Mercury retrograde, Mercury turned retrograde on October 20th, 21st, right in there, and it turns direct on November 10th. So we are toward the end, but deep into this Mercury retrograde phase. When Mercury is retrograde, it's closer to Earth. Mercury is the planet of communication, interaction, interchange of energy and information. And when Mercury is retrograde, it is often a time where we dig back into what could have or should have been done, or tie up loose ends that should have already been tied up. And so this Mercury retrograde is certainly an interesting part of this because it is so close to the eclipse that happened on Sunday the 3rd. But the other thing to consider here is that Saturn, which spends about 2 years in each sign, is about halfway through its run or steady walk through the sign of Scorpio. And therefore, this solar eclipse was also not only in Scorpio, but in Scorpio and, as Jeff said, in close proximity to Sirius, karmic Saturn, and not only close to retrograde Mercury, but one of the things that we'll talk about as we unfold the month is that Mercury actually retrogrades back over, and then it retrograded back over the Saturn, and then later in the month we'll move forward over it again, and Mercury again is thought and communication, Saturn is Sirius, and so there's this background tenor all month to the gravity of the seriousness of communication in general because of the Saturn's proximity not only to the eclipse but to Mercury starting back in October. Actually, it was October 8th that Mercury first joined up with Saturn moving forward. It retrograded back over Saturn on October 29th, and will go over Saturn the 3rd and final time once it turns direct somewhere, there it is, on November 25th.
For those of you who are new to astrology, Mercury, the communication planet, appears to turn backwards 3 times a year for 3 weeks at a time. And this apparent backward motion of Mercury represents a withdrawal or an inward turn of the things it stands for. Mercury's data, communication, information. And that's why during Mercury retrograde periods we often have more difficulty in communication. there are more snafus, equipment breaks down, travel is more difficult. Those are sort of the popular ideas about what Mercury retrograde is. This one is like triple retrograde, I think, because it's in Scorpio, which is kind of like a retrograde sign. Now,
Because it's indrawn, or...
That's right, because Scorpio, there's more going on below the surface than what we see on the surface. Retrograde is not bad, it's not less, it just means internal reference takes precedence over external expression. So we have the planet of communication going backwards, which can also mean rethinking things or getting back to projects, ideas, or tasks which have been on hold for a while. So Mercury backwards in inward-looking Scorpio, and dancing around controlling restrictive Saturn. I think one of the best ways to use this is to slow down the thinking process and to avoid hasty commitments and hasty remarks. This is really a cycle. I think all Mercury retrogrades are like that to some degree, and this one perhaps more than most, for the reasons I just mentioned, when taking that extra moment, that extra day to consider something is really worth the effort.
So that sets the tone for the month. It's not a lightweight month, although it does lighten up at points during the month, to the extent that we really can find some hope, some fun, some excitement later in the month. But I think that the seriousness of it is also about another Saturn concept, and that's about control. You know, for those of us who live in this state, most of everyone present here, you know, we just saw what corporate money can do to suppress popular opinion with the defeat, or the looming defeat, of the GMO labeling law. And in a way, this is the insidious side of not only Saturn's heaviness or control, but also the other side of the Uranus-Pluto, of how those in control will do whatever they can to hold on to control. And I don't think we've seen the end of this, not just with GMOs, but with the relationship between the individual and the nation state or corporations all around the world.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that Saturn, the planet of hard, cold reality, is in Scorpio. In astrology, Pluto is the planet that modern astrologers, most of us, assign to Scorpio. And Pluto is not only the lord of the underworld, he was the god of wealth. And a plutocracy is a society ruled by the wealthy, concentration of wealth. And interestingly, one of the things that came up about 522, the GMO labeling law, was the secret money. That there was a lot of money being spent to defeat the referendum that was not reported. Secrecy is a big scorpionic theme. And although there are certainly situations in which it is appropriate to hold our tongues and to be discreet in the public sphere in which democratic ideas are supposed to flow freely, sort of knowing who's putting the ads on television is an important thing. But, you know, I was thinking this earlier when Rick was talking about Uranus square Pluto at the beginning. It's really easy to dump on institutions. I mean, what institution do you want to dump on? The government? Well, that's easy. How about the banks? How about the insurance companies? How about the schools? How about Microsoft?
Okay.
Ooh. How about the SoulFood institution and bureaucracy and hierarchy? There they are, Craig. There's the devil. Well, join Rick Levine and Jeff Jower for their annual forecast seminar at beautiful Brighton Bush Hot Springs, Oregon from January 10th through 12th next year. For details, go to brightonbush.com. That's BREITENBUSH.com. Join astrologers Jeff Jower, Alan Oken, Aaron Sullivan, and Lauren Albandian for the Wisdom of Astrology Conference from March 29th to April 4th, 2014 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. For details and registration, go to alanoken.com or click the link on the front page of stariq.com.